Hello, lovelies. Welcome to the first year anniversary celebration that we're doing for our podcast. I am super excited. We are doing special episodes as a celebration. 2 weeks ago, we did the first Essentials compilation, and this is the second Essentials compilation. These are the two special episodes for the month to celebrate our anniversary. So last year, September 2023, we launched our new podcast, and now we're celebrating its first year. And I am so excited to have compiled special segments from each episode from last year. So we compiled a few into the first special episode, and now we're compiling the second half of the episodes into this other special Essentials compilation episode. So if that was confusing, don't worry about it. We just know that we are doing segments, snippets from prior episodes to compile this Essentials experience so that you could get a quick taste of all the episodes that we've covered all of last year. So the two Essentials episodes of this month will cover all of the episodes that we've done so far. You'll get little snippets in each, and you'll get a flavors to the topics that we cover, which generally have to do all with relationship, with wellness, self-care, and all things to make us better partners, have a better relationship experience, and be able to show up in the world with our best self, be the best partner, and create the best relationship so we could have the best life in a nutshell. So that's the idea of the podcast. We want to have amazing conversations with guests, colleagues, friends to bring you special topics so that we could support you in your journey. And that's what we've been doing all of last year. And these two Essentials special episodes are a highlight of what we've done so far. So I hope that you enjoy them. This particular compilation today covers some parenting stuff, covers some health and wellness, covers some sexy stuff, sexuality, sexual health, sex in relationship with your partner, and just how to have a sexy relationship, sex life. And we have some other good stuff in there, interconnectedness and wellness and just all kinds of beautiful things just to support you all around in your journey. So feel free to check it out. The easiest way to listen is to look at the description or the chapters, and you will see the segments, or you have timestamps for the segments. So feel free to check that out and see what talks to you. So you could jump around and listen to the things that resonate for you or that pertain to you and your journey that will serve you best. And additionally, we'll have those linked to their original episode so you could get more of that flavor if that's what you need. And if you want even more, feel free to subscribe to the gifts that we have on the podcast page, metrorelationship.com/podcast. There we have a compilation of all the episodes, all of the guests with the links to their episodes and all of the gifts that they had that offered to our audience. So you could get everything in your inbox. You don't have to go jumping around and looking for things. So feel free to just one pit stop, metrorelationship.com/podcast. And there you could enroll, subscribe, whatever, opt in to get that compilation. So you have everything in one spot. When you do that, you'll get all of the guests' gifts plus a gift from me, the Minute Enrichment Relationship course. And we really are here to hook you up. So we want to support you in all the ways that we can and compile this nice little experience for you in a celebration of our podcast. And if you haven't checked it out yet, that podcast page, it's a subtle rebrand. I'm calling it refresh of the layout of how we're displaying and showcasing and sharing our episodes. So they're easier to find and easier to use and easier to keep referring to. So feel free to check it out and look around if that interests you. Okay, my loves, without further ado, I hope that you really enjoy this episode. I put in all my love into this project to celebrate and share the celebration with you and have your back as we do it. As always, I always keep you in mind when we create anything, and feel free to let us know what kind of things tickle you, what kind of topics you want to hear, what kind of things you prefer to watch and listen to. Feel free to leave us a comment in all of the places, depending on where you're watching this. And I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Enjoy. So, Jeff, tell me a little bit more. Tell me, the audience, this whole thing with consciousness and interconnectedness. Can you explain then, if we're not molecules, right? And if we're not our nervous system, and that's not where consciousness lives, then can you explain a little bit more? What is it? Where does it live? And how are we interconnected really? Aside from like me, my body's not just my body. Actually, Emma and I is not just this, it's also all the microorganisms that, that
Right.
inhabit this bodysuit. That freaked me out when you said that. That's the first time I heard it that
Sorry.
way. That was so good. But yeah, so a little bit more about that. And then the implication of that for partners, right? So I love that you used the we already in there and the us.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So can you tell a little bit more? And then we could see how that our listeners could use that to impact their relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned before, and as you just pointed out, the idea of us as individuals, right? We're
Mhm.
kind of taught that it starts with understanding. Well, you're a physical thing, and you're there. I'm going to have a cat guest here who has to be
Yay.
encouraged to maybe do something else. Okay. Um, but unfortunately, in starting from that point, it lends itself to a lot of very awkward questions. And what I mean by awkward is that they're questions that have sort of presumed something that isn't true, and as such become very unanswerable. So you will hear, for example, people refer to the hard question of consciousness, like how does the brain generate consciousness?
Right.
Well, you've started with the assumption that the brain generates consciousness. And
That's
if
right.
it turns out that the brain doesn't generate consciousness, you're kind of already at a dead end. And the evidence, sorry, materialists, the evidence is overwhelming that it doesn't. That's
Right.
not how it works. The brain isn't generating consciousness. There are lots of documented stories of people who have no brain activity, and yet when they are revived from that state, can relate exactly what was happening during that time. They're still receiving information, right? If you let go of the idea that the brain is a generator of awareness, and instead, for example, think of that the brain might be an antenna into a much broader thing, something that rather than generates consciousness, something that helps focus into particular pieces of it, right? So the brain maybe as a way of relating a consciousness that is not bound in time and space, and allows you to filter down to those perceptions, experiences, what have you, that relate to what we think of as ourselves, as our lives, as our experience, as our journey, right? This now becomes a much more understandable process. You can explain a lot of things this way. How is it that some children come to their parents one day at the age of 4 and give them memories of what it was like to be a fighter pilot in World War II?
Mm.
They couldn't possibly remember that from a physical perspective, right? But if they are tapping into a greater awareness of something, right? Because they're not filtering down to exactly the experiences that are the here and now as we describe them, then it works perfectly well. And now, when you think about that, and you look at this in the context of a relationship, right? What is it that's happening there? Well, instead of saying, "Well, I'm here, I occupy this space, and you occupy that space, and now we are different," rather, you've got a consciousness that's not inherently bounded that way, but these two people who are having this experience with each other, you realize we're actually more or less the same thing. We're two different facets on the same gem, right?
Mm.
We have an inherent relationship. And it is funny in this context how humanity fights with itself so much when we are 99.99% the same, right? We get so hung up on the 0.01% differences that make me from this country and you from that country, and yet we're
Mhm.
almost the same. We've got little uniquenesses about us, and that's fantastic.
Mhm.
And of course, that's a different topic of why we don't celebrate those uniquenesses when that's really what we should be enjoying,
That's
right?
right.
Like if everybody was identical, what would be the point? I
Right.
want somebody who's a little different, gives me a different perspective and all that.
Right.
But we are more or less part of the same overall system. So when you think about two people who are in a relationship, instead of looking at this and saying, well, I'm me and you're you, and I have to figure out how to appease you or work around you or anything else, it changes I think the mindset that you have to say, all right, we're mostly the same. We're working at this as a partnership, right? And we're two faces of the same partnership. We solve problems differently. We think about things differently, but that could be a really good thing, right? Because now it means that if I'm struggling with how to understand something, I've got this other person who looks at things a little bit differently, and maybe they can offer an insight that I wasn't able to see. And that's usually, I think, where you see people describing themselves as having a healthy relationship. They're not the same as me, but I respect them, right? And the core of that respect comes from the fact that you realize we're really connected, whether we recognize it actively or not. But if we recognize it more often, then we're better able to make that connection and have that connection be a healthy thing rather than something that's self-damaging.
The more I know me, the more I accept me, the more in charge of me I am, the more I manage me, the easier it is to be around me.
What a
Yeah, because
concept.
people aren't trying to do this all the time. Containing, okay? This is what we do. I say to clients all the time, this is what we do with toddlers and teens. We contain them. Why are you not containing yourself? You know, and we have to like self-containment. It doesn't mean that it's always fun. I'm not always happy to do it. Sometimes, and this is a really cool thing I learned, if I breathe in, I can't talk.
I love that. That's like in kindergarten, I think, or
Yeah.
very early years, they teach the little kids, hold the bubble.
And I'll just go like this. Because who am I to tell them that they're wrong, right?
So interesting. I love how you said that. I think that even us, that we are in charged with helping create and facilitate change, who are we to tell somebody else what to do? We don't even do it. Right. So we might say to people, have you looked at it? Have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? What about this? What about that? Right. Try this, try that. Like what suits you best? People are still the owner of themselves, right? They're still the master of themselves. They still have the self-agency, and they will know if what we offer resonates for them, if it works for who they are and who they're trying to become, who they are evolving into being, who that they already have. I got lost in translation along the way, right? But they're becoming more who they are. We facilitate that.
Yes, absolutely. Because some of it is recognizing that if we go back to red-blooded mammals, okay, then that's how we learn. So if I am showing you a different way to interact with your husband, with your children, it doesn't mean that I'm 100% right. It means that you want to be open-minded enough to say, hey, I wonder if I did it a little differently, or if I borrowed some of that from Cynthia to see if it fits, you know? So it's more about that so that we can get, you know, not so much emotional judgment, you know? Now, I'm a big person on having judgment because our world does not practice judgment very well right now. So I want us to be adults with good judgment, right?
Discernment.
Yes,
yes,
exactly.
I hear you.
So but I don't want to be judging someone because I don't understand them or I don't like them or I think they're stupid or whatever it is, right?
Or I don't agree.
Yes, yes. And so I think that it's wonderful like to hear you talk this way because I think the people that really love humans like you and I do, you know, I tell people all the time, I said, I just love humans. I just love them, you know? I want to know about them. I want to help them. I want to see them. You know, and so, you know, that kind of a platform causes them to be able to settle down, you know, and hear some things that might not be, I don't know, might not be super fun to hear, but it no longer becomes ouchy, you know?
Yes. Right. So I love that. Yes, we do love humans. I'm so with you. And part of why I'm here is to hopefully help people do their human condition better, have a better human experience, right? And that's what I'm working on for myself. And that's what I want to offer others. And they could receive as much or as little as they'd like. It's still their journey. And I love what you just said, that if we're able to kind of settle down a little bit, just because you know that I'm not coming from a place of forcing it.
Right.
I just this. Let's just all be curious. Can we do this better? Right. So we have a better experience.
Mhm.
Fabulous. Right. And then we just kind of chill out.
Mhm.
And in that chilling out, we might become more open and more receptive. And
Right.
then we might be able to take some of the suggestions in and tailor them to fit ourselves if we have to.
Mhm.
Perfect. Yes, I love that.
Because I always tell clients, you don't have to do anything I tell you.
Thank you so much for that breakdown of the types of rituals.
Sure.
And if you could share a little bit about why they're important, why is it significant? Because in the example that you gave, the guy could say, why do we have to do all these celebrations? What's the point? Such a waste
Yeah.
of money, time, who cares? I'm not outgoing, I'm an introvert, right?
Right.
So all the things. And so why is it significant or important to have rituals?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. They really are the connective tissue in our family and community systems.
Right.
And, if you just try to imagine your life with no rituals, it's hard to imagine. I mean, you're going to have daily rituals, like it or not. You're going to eat a meal together. You're going to, put a child to bed and read a story and things like that. The bigger rituals, traditions, celebrations, life cycle rituals, often there has to be a good bit of negotiating in a couple because one comes from one kind of background, the other comes from another kind of background. Lots of arguments certainly occur around different ritual seasons. Do we celebrate? Don't we? How do we? How
With
do we make
whom?
it our own? Which family do we go to? If it's Christmas or Easter or
Mhm.
Passover. Passover, thankfully, there's 2 nights of Seder, so you can go to both. But
It's convenient.
yeah. So, and that's something that I will certainly hear in a therapy session,
Yep.
how people have struggled to work that out, what happens at key developmental points, like children leaving home and
Mhm.
setting up their own household. How does the ritual, let's say of Easter, that's what's coming, need to change? Does it need to change, or is the expectation that adult children will always come back to their family of origin? Well, that's fine until they have a partner. And then there needs to be some negotiating as to, are we going to do one year and one the other? Or are we going to take 2 days and, visit here? And today, I'm sure you and your listeners know, so many people have moved far away from their families of origin.
Right.
So, though, certainly we always see on television for Christmas, for Easter, and so forth, big,
Thanksgiving.
big airport days, right? Big travel days, so, big driving days where
Mhm.
people want to go and be with their families.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that I know that rituals do and why I encourage clients to partake and to get better at them and better and make it more and more meaningful and special is because, and you could correct me if you have additional thoughts on this or reinforce what I'm saying, they have a way of transmitting family legacies as well
Yes,
and imparting the meaning of who we are
yes.
and create that cohesiveness in the family. So any thoughts about that?
I think you're right. Of course, you always want to find out, let's say in a couple, what was a given ritual like in the family they came from?
Mhm.
Because sometimes one partner had a terrific experience with, let's just say, Christmas,
Mhm.
and the other had a terrible experience year after year after year. Yeah, I think in rituals for our times, I've talked about a family where when Christmas would come, the father would take to his bed
Mm.
and just would not come out. And, it was very hard on the mom and the kids, and they didn't understand it. And finally, he was able to speak about what happened to him as a child. That Christmas was a terrible time. It was he was in a family that was quite abusive, and on Christmas it was even worse because his father would not just get drunk, but roaring drunk, and would abuse him.
Right.
And so he took to hiding on holidays.
Yep.
And once his wife and his children understood his story, then they were able to figure out with him, how can we make this so that it's very different, that it doesn't bring back bad memories. And they worked on it, and they created a new ritual for themselves. And so it's that kind of thing. I think it's important for all of us, excuse me,
Mhm.
to think about what was a given ritual like in the family I come from. How was it celebrated? Was it celebrated?
Right.
Were people good to each other, or were they not good to each other? And then you can begin to work on, how do you want this to be now and into the future?
Right. So that ties it back to what I said earlier, that they could be healing, right? What a beautiful experience. If we have a
Yeah,
chance to now change it, have a different story around it, a different
that's right.
experience.
That's
That's
right.
lovely. Right. Very, very nice. How we co-create, I'm using, I don't know if that language makes sense for us, right? But just see if it builds into the next thing that you want to talk about in terms of creating our own reality and being what I'd like to say a victor versus a victim, like you said, right? So choosing to win and not to lose, focusing on the positive, not the negative, like those kind of choices, and possibly co-creating with our partner. So what would that look like from your end?
Thank you so much. And that's it. I like to say we can be a creator of our reality or a victim of our circumstances. And
Mhm.
so let's put a victim of circumstances first. So let's talk about those socks that are there in the corner from the man. And I know I did that. I'm getting better. I'm getting better all the time. And now I even put them together. So when they're in the laundry, they're together. So they're not separated.
What?
Woo!
Wow, I just learned something. I love that. I might have to teach that to people.
And so a victim of circumstances, let's say you're tired and then you come in the room and you see that. Then you're going to say, oh, I can't believe this. And now you're going into that rabbit hole of letting the outside circumstances dictate how you feel. This is very important. Letting outside circumstances dictate how we feel. When we do that, we empower the outside circumstances, and by the same token, we disempower ourselves.
Perfect.
So it says, oh, this is doing this to me, this is doing that to me, then we become a victim. And
Mhm.
so when that happens, there's one simple thing, and it's the first time you hear, it's like a slap in the face, and it's called taking 100% responsibility.
What? What a
So
concept.
taking 100% responsibility. Now check this out. Well, it's not my fault if the socks are on the floor. How can I take responsibility for that? Okay, so change it. It says, how can I take responsibility for the socks on the floor? So maybe it could be, maybe I pick up my own clothes. Maybe mine is not on the floor, but it's on the chair. So maybe if I was to hang it up or put it in the hamper basket, it would give an example and the other can follow. Maybe not. That's okay. You still love them. And that's part of the game. Nobody's perfect. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. So who are we to expect perfection from others? That's a lose-lose situation. But
Beautiful.
taking 100% responsibility, now let's put it the other way. Creating our reality. When you take responsibility, if you see a situation that is not to your liking, what can you do to be better with it? How can you act rather than react to the situation? Because when we react, we're not taking responsibilities. We're blaming others. Oh, the interest rate is this. I'm tired this week. It's easy to put it outside. So if, for example, we say, oh, I'm tired. Well, why don't you go to bed earlier tonight? Well, that's too simple, is it? Is it too simple?
But I can go
How
to
about
sleep earlier.
Exactly. Or take five. This is something that actually recently was told by my coach. He says, you need to meditate 3 times a day.
Mm.
Okay. So now listen to me, the victim. What do you mean 3 times a day? Have you seen my schedule? I'm so busy. There's no way I can do this. And he just said, well, I just made a suggestion for you. You can say that you can't do it because of this, and that. Or how about you ask the question, how can I put meditation 3 times in my day? And then he said something that was nice. He says, it does not need to be 1 hour every time. It could be 5 minutes. And then it turned my life around thinking, yeah, I can do 3 times 5 minutes. I can find a spot for this. And then the 5 minutes, some of them became 20 minutes. Some of them became 1 hour, a day that I had less things to do. And so because of that, I started to incorporate because I changed the questions I asked myself. I was taking responsibility. How can I meditate 3 times a day? Now my mind, remember the communication we talked, is focused on finding solutions to that question.
Right.
So I said, oh, well, I can do it this way, or I can do it that way. And then when I miss and I don't do 3 times in the day, I don't beat myself up. I'll do better tomorrow. That's all. And so as you do these things, you start to take 100% responsibility, and bit by bit, giving yourself patience and love, you will get better. And guess what? As I do meditation 3 times a day, I'm more calm and less irritable. Well, actually, we had 6 kids. Now they're all gone. So it's much easier. There's less chaos in the house now. But before, there was a lot. Imagine 6 kids around the table. So it's easy to let the outside circumstance control us when we can say, hey, how can I do better with this? And I think we talked about this, Emma, for example. 6 kids, it's bound that one of them is going to drop his juice or his milk. For sure. Almost every meal. And I used to lose patience. What are you doing? And then my wife says, she asked the following question, will this matter 1,000 years from now? And I go, of course not. She goes, so why do you get irritated with it? Wow. Says, why don't we use that as an example for the kids to become self-reliant? If they drop it, says, okay, now that you drop it, what can you do to fix this? And the kid, they're not stupid. They're going to say, well, I'm going to get a rag and maybe very good. And then you praise them as they're doing this. And now it's a learning experience and nobody is freaking out anymore and it's all calm. What is that? Taking responsibility. You're going to say, well, that's not my fault if you drop the glass. You're correct, but it's your responsibility how you're going to act with it in the relationship. It's the same thing. We take responsibility. Are we seeing this as an attack to us? Or maybe they're tired. Maybe they didn't see what we said. Maybe they did not hear what we have just said. So that taking responsibility could be as far as if someone reacts to what we said, we can say something like, I'm sorry, I don't think this was the intent of what I said. What did you hear? And they say, well, I heard this and that. Well, that's why you're saying this, because that's not what I meant. And I'm sorry I didn't express myself in the proper way. So when you do this, the other person, you're no longer fighting like this. Now it's an open communication. And we can find
Yes.
out more about it. Yes. And we don't have all the truth. It's okay if someone says blue and you say green. You don't need to fight for it. One says blue, you say green. That's it. It's okay. And so this is something of being a creator of your reality. You decide.
So, what do you think are other things then that contribute to people not being interested in being touched or not being interested in intimacy, sex, or have low desire?
Yes. So one of the most common things that will bring couples into any therapist's office is really what we call desire discrepancy, where one partner, wants more, usually more frequent sex. Now, sometimes it can also be, different, sexual behaviors for sure.
Right.
But just in terms of the frequency, it's so common. And here's where some education really is important, because I'll go into other factors, but this one is just not common enough knowledge, which is sexual styles. There are two big sexual styles. One is spontaneous, the other is called responsive. And spontaneous sexual style is what we know the most about. This is the person who is just walking down the street and, every sixth thought is about something sexual. They just have an internal engine that easily they feel desire. It just pops up, or they have a thought, or they see a person that they're attracted, or, they see a sign, just that some of us might not react to.
Hmm.
And spontaneous sexual desire is it's what we see in the media. It's what we see in the movies. This is where people are dropping their clothes, and, as soon as they walk in the door, and the sex is, hot and passionate in 5 seconds.
Right.
That's what we're familiar with. But that is not representative by everybody. So an equally large group is represented by something we call responsive desire. And this is the one that's not in the movies. And this responsive desire people are those who don't particularly walk around with that internally charged engine that just, pops up naturally. They are more inclined to where arousal might actually come first before desire. And what that means is this question of, I'm not in the mood, is the wrong question. The question is, oh, am I open and willing to engage in physical touch? And when I am touched, or I am touching, then some inklings of arousal might show up. And, oh, I am very glad to be here doing this. And so desire shows up. But let me back up a moment, because these are the folks where the context is crucial. So context meaning, are they fatigued? Are they preoccupied with a work deadline or a project? Or they have a family member who's maybe struggling or ill, or, there's one of their children is, on their mind because of some problem that needs to be addressed. All these are contextual issues.
Right.
And for a spontaneous person, these might be just factors. But for a responsive person, these are central. These are decisive.
Right.
And so we don't know about responsive sexual style. And even the people who fall into that category, they've never known about it because it's not talked about.
Right.
Except for books in recent years, thank goodness, that are certainly bring this information. So most couples, and this can be true in my experience, even with same gendered couples, usually have one representative from each group. Now, Emily Nagoski, in her book Come As You Are, Emily's a sexuality researcher, she gives some statistics, and which I think are interesting, that there are some nuances to this, but I'll give you the bottom line, which is about 75% of men are in the spontaneous sexual style, which would fit with what I think we commonly know.
Right.
And about 25% of men would be in the responsive category. And then for women, it's flipped, where, and here's where there's nuances, but there's about 85% who would fall into that responsive category. Now, the really goofy thing about this is that in dating, in the early stages of infatuation, this is when most couples tend, not everybody, but tend to be the most interested. And so the spontaneous people, that's their happy place. And the responsive people, they look more spontaneous during that time, because we're creatures of novel and new and infatuation. There's all sorts of hormones coursing through our bodies. And so in a couple that ends up staying together long term, that naturally fades. That's biology. But we very confused by that. The spontaneous person saying, what happened to my partner who wanted to have sex with me all the time? Suddenly, it's important that there's food in the refrigerator that didn't used to be. Or
That's
being
awesome.
late to work, that's not a problem. Now it's important to not be late to work, to stay home and have sex. So, and the responsive people are also confused, because nobody knows what quite happened, and they don't know what to do at that point. And so that's where just a lot of unnecessary suffering comes into play.
play is very significant. It's not just moving pieces around on a board or playing with dollies and
Right.
having them drink tea. There's so much more stuff going on, right? So they're bringing in, they're showing their level of development. They're showing if they're thinking, they're showing, like, you tell me, like, what are you seeing it through play that parents, so parents know how important play is.
Yeah. So I'm looking at levels of sophistication.
Right.
And I'm looking at, is it coming down to cause and effect play? Because that's also important and it needs to happen. Is it then just physical play? That's part of development too. That what happens when, what it looks like when a child is out of ideas. And that's something that is really important to pinpoint. So parents often say, well, all of a sudden, and I love the all of a sudden. I go, really? Is it really all of a sudden?
Right.
That it's like, well, all of a sudden they get silly. I go, okay. And then they tend to use that term of, oh, you're being so silly. Right. So then you're attributing silly to their state of being. So now the child is a silly child. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, so that silliness that you're seeing, that's dysregulation.
Excellent.
And when you pinpoint it and you go, do you notice when exactly it happens? It's when the challenge is too big, or when the child doesn't know how to continue the play because they haven't had enough experience to take one idea and make it last. And then ideas then end all of a sudden. And sometimes the all of a sudden for younger kids looks like they're building, I don't know, they're playing with magnets, and then all of a sudden they crash the tower. Right? That all of a sudden means I don't know what else to do.
Right.
I don't know where else to take this. And then other times it looks like I've had kids just run away, where the play becomes so complex and now there's language involved, and the complexity I'm talking about is now we're taking on the roles of the characters. And when you become the character, then it's also thinking becomes multi-causal.
Right.
And it's how do I become a character and also pull back so that I'm the character and myself at the same time. So when I become a character and I wreck things as characters do, and I get this shocked reaction, I go, that wasn't me. Like that was the dinosaur. I don't know what happened. Like, how do we handle that kind of an obstacle? And it usually starts with, that's where you see the meltdowns or the tantrums, however you want to call them, because it's where it comes from is the unexpected. Right? And often I get either like feedback from, social media or parents asking, well, shouldn't the kids be ready for the world? I go, okay, at 3, like the world is going to tell them no all the time. I go, great. He's also 5, like chronologically, right? And we really have to consider that social emotional development, because a chronological 5-year-old can also be social emotionally at toddler level. So there's this expectation of, they're so smart, shouldn't they know? And I'm going, right. They have certain capacities. What about the others?
Excellent.
So that's one of the toughest, I think, for parents when kids have a lot of sophisticated language and they're very verbal, and there's, they know that there's high intelligence, and they go, well, how come they can't handle the smallest change? Like, why is it that things just have to be the same? And my feedback is, well, what is it like for you when I completely change your entire day? Like,
yeah, we don't
you like
that.
routine too. You like routine too. What happens when you're on your way to the office and all of a sudden there is a car accident, or all of a sudden there's a traffic jam and the lane is closed? The first thing you do is you're going to get really dysregulated. Like,
Mhm.
what's going on? How come this is happening? And the best way, actually, that I like to people watch at airports, people get dysregulated at airports all the time,
Oh yeah.
where it's like, it's not the attendant's fault that the plane is late.
Right.
Like, I understand that you have a connecting flight. I might have one also. And you going off on this attendant to ask her, how come, like, this is where I need to go? How come the plane is late? I'm not sure if that's really going to get you an answer. So that is a dysregulated adult who can then, let's say that dysregulated adult also meets a dysregulated child. That is a volcanic eruption waiting to happen. Like, there's no way that a adult who is dysregulated to such a degree can also regulate a child at the same time.
Excellent. Yes, absolutely. So let's go back for a second to the play thing, and then we'll continue with this regulation conversation. I love that. So in play, some of the things are the sophistication. How many ideas do they have? Can they take the idea to the next level? Can they take on characters, and can they differentiate that and hold on to different things at the same time? So there's a lot of different aspects there that most
Yes.
parents are not aware of, that this is what play is and what's
Yes.
involved. And that the more that that's done, and that the more that it gets developed, that the child is doing better or developing. And that when you see the meltdowns or the little change in the kid throws a tantrum or they start saying no, and we could talk about that too, then these are just examples of they hit a wall to some degree,
Right.
and helping them. Maybe we could talk about that too. How do we get past that, as opposed to calling them silly, and now they don't even understand what's going on for them, and that they could get past that, not they're just silly. So this weird associations are happening, right? So we think that we're the best
Yes.
parents. Oh, you're so silly. We think it's cute, but what are we doing,
Right.
right? Very interesting. So the message starts really early, even like in the most innocuous ways. Messaging about self,
Exactly.
about feelings, about body, about all the things. So very interesting.
So when parents talk about, like, how come that whole respect piece is what you're asking them at an age that's too young, is that you're asking them to think like you, versus first thinking like your 5-year-old or 6-year-old, or even like thinking like your 10, 11, 12-year-old. Like, get into their mindset to go, like, what is it doing? What is this doing for them? Like, what is this really doing for them? And I had this, and it's interesting because I had a conversation. I'm seeing like a soon to be 12, 13-year-old. And he goes, sometimes I just kick my younger brother out of nowhere. And like, dad keeps asking me why I'm doing it. Now, in terms of language, why is very blaming.
Yes.
Right? Why'd you do that? Versus, how did that work for you? You're like inviting curiosity. So he's telling me all these things, and he goes, I need you to fix it. Like, just tell me what to do. And I go, well, I'm going to ask you a question in return. Like, when you decide to kick your brother, where does that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Because in my mind, I was like, I know the answer. It's boredom. And I was like, where does that come from? Like, and then it's also, what does that do for you? Like, what does that do for you? He responds. I go, oh. And then you know what that does to your brain?
Wow.
It goes, cool. Now, like, we got a back and forth. Now, like, there's a dopamine spike. Right? Now we're in it. And I go, okay, well, it sounds to me like when you're feeling bored and you're not sure what to do, you're looking for other things to do. And I go, for knowing you, I said, I also know that you really enjoy looking at a book. And he goes, oh, okay, I guess I could just grab a book. And then he goes, well, what about when we're out? Like, when we're outside and, like we've taken, a family trip for the day, when we're out, kind of, he's going like, what do you got for me? Like, how about that? Right? Like, so now what? Like, we're sitting and we're waiting for, I don't know, like there's a wait and there's a lull and like the boredom creeps up. And then I said to him, I go, I'm wondering, right? Always like there's a wonder, a curiosity. And I go, I'm wondering, when you guys leave for the day, do you bring a backpack with you? And then he goes, oh my God, do you think I could put a book in my backpack? And I said, wow, that's so great you figured it out.
Amazing.
Like we think that it's right. Like for us, it's so small and we're thinking, I mean, that's where I was headed. For him, it was so big because he was like, oh, I solved it. Like I could bring a book with me
So good.
and put it in my backpack. And that way, like I know even the fact that knowing that it's there
Right.
can already be helpful, where it's like, this is what I need in order to avoid just like kicking my brother to incite him into something with me. Right. And then there comes those like parents say, well, it's attention seeking. Right. Like what is going on with all these like negative attention seeking behaviors? And I go, oh, I think it's connection. So versus it being like attention seeking sounds so negative, it's they're looking for something. They're looking for connection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that something's going on that, you know, the connection is disrupted or the nervous system hasn't gotten enough connection throughout the day. And your child doesn't have, again, like enough knowledge or self-awareness or words or language to tell you like, hey, mom, dad, I'm really feeling disconnected from you right now. Do you mind like reconnecting with me so I'm good for the next, you know, like half of the day? And I'm sure like with working with adults, how often do adults go, you know, like I'm being nasty because I'm feeling like there's a disconnect happening.
That's so good.
So it's
Yeah, so
and it's something that we've got to model too.
Totally. So I actually teach couples this for themselves, right? So whenever they're like something that normally wouldn't bother you so much, or that's annoying, but you're okay. But then when it really puts you over the top, it's not about the thing. It's like you're not feeling connected. So that bandwidth is lower, right? So same concept. And I usually teach parents also, you know, how about some special mommy-daughter time, some special daddy-daughter or son, mommy-daddy, whatever the combinations, right? So special attention and how you build that into the routines. And so totally connections, you know, it's so interesting. Like it's almost like the magic pill. Like it pretty much solves all of the problems. Of course, there's other things that we need to do, right? But like that's it. Really, a lot of the times, just boils down to like when you're connected to yourself, your partner, your kid, things are easier, right? The body is an interconnected system, so it's not just a little body just here. And if I do this, everything's perfect. So tell us more about what you're thinking about that.
Well, some of the things that I've been learning with some of the specialists is I've had people that have come on and talked about specific types of alternative lifestyles. I guess it's the best way to describe it. You know, looking at functional medicine or looking at something like Ayurveda, which has been around a lot longer than we know about. But what all of these do is they look at the body as a whole. And we tend to focus more on just the one thing that we think is wrong.
Right.
Well, I'm fat, so I'll just fix that and everything will be fine. Where it might be that other parts of our lives could be affecting that particular area. We talked about emotional eating, where how we interact with other people, how we interact with TV. That's part of that holistic approach. And, you know, how we feed our bodies, how we feed our minds, and how we treat our body and minds kind of has to be looked at from a whole perspective. There is a show that I listen to that I'm trying to get her on the show where she's talked about this low tox lifestyle, where yes, there's a lot of things in our food that are making our body unhealthy. Yeah. But there's a lot of things in our environment where some people have this weird association with smells or touches or sounds. It's hard for me to put it in words, but I've learned from all of these practices that you have to look at the body as a whole, because the symptom that we have might be caused by something completely different than what we think it is. So that's one of the things that I haven't quite grasped it yet, but I'm learning that we have to look at our body in a multidimensional, holistic way.
When we're having some of those symptoms and the body's saying something is not right, what might be some other things that might be going on in our life, in our lifestyle, how we're doing ourselves that does create this something's going on in our body, manifest in our body and in our health, right? And eventually a disease.
Well, I think stress is a major thing for all of us. I think we all have, unfortunately, stress in our lives, and that manifests in different ways. And it often can come out physically. You see it in physical symptoms, and often people with autoimmune disease have stress that has contributed to that, or even any other regular disease, such as a cancer, can come on starting as stress. And they say that even with stress, you may not have been diagnosed with a disease yet, but if you run labs, you can see the beginning of those antibodies starting to build and increase. So you will see a lot of stress and those lifestyle, feelings of, those workaholics who always have to get things done, being a perfectionist. A lot of us were raised in that environment, or maybe having people around you that are over controlling, or, maybe you yourself are over serving, taking care of everyone else and not prioritizing your own well-being. You do for everyone before yourself. And I often see that with women, especially, tend to be the martyrs who are going to do for everyone before themselves. And it's very common, I know, with thyroid clients especially. I see that they're always doing for others, and they feel guilty to take that time out for their own well-being and their health. And I often have to remind them and work with them to say, if you're not around, you can't help anyone. If you're not being able to get off the couch, you can't help anyone. So it's really important to prioritize yourself so that you can give more to others and help others and feel good in that way. But if you don't have that energy to give, you're going to really be depleting yourself on a regular basis. So stress, really, that cortisol really, depletes and throws off the body, all those hormone imbalances. It really does cause a hormone imbalance if you have chronic stress like that. So
Yeah.
I think stress is a huge factor. So knowing how to manage stress is very important.
Absolutely. I love how you also mentioned all the other patterns in there, right? Over helping other people, prioritizing other people, just the grind, the overdoing, the overfunctioning, the perfectionism, right? So all of those things create stress in and of themselves, but the patterns themselves have specific ways that might impact our well-being, not just that one hormone, right? So like,
Right.
how else what other patterns do you see that play out in people's lives or relationships, and what body parts might they affect and in what ways?
I often see people don't feel worthy. They feel shameful. They kind of don't want to have confrontation. And you'll see that in, pain. They'll have pain, they'll have fatigue, they'll have depression, mood changes, and with thyroid especially, it'll cause hair loss. And that's a stress symptom as well as a thyroid symptom, which a lot of stress and thyroid tend to overlap.
Right.
And it's really, it's very difficult because you really have to slowly build your self-worth, your prioritizing your healing, and giving yourself compassion. And every client that I work with, that's where we start. We start with that self-compassion and, kind of asking yourself, what's the most healthy and self-compassionate thing I can do for myself right now, today? One small thing.
Well, the first thing I would do is look at someone's rhythm. Are they always on the go? Are they eating at regular times? Are they getting enough protein in, which is huge? Because most people, especially if it's grab and go, aren't really thinking about the protein content, which I always recommend like 40 to 50 grams a day, special, well, for men and women, maybe for men a little bit more if you're working out. And what protein helps do is it helps build muscle, and it really helps stabilize blood sugar. it's also very like on a more metaphysical level, kind of grounding for us. So it just helps bring us back within the body, we could say.
We might have to come
Definitely.
back to that point to come back to. I'm going to pin that.
Awesome. Having enough healthy fats, drinking enough water, because all of these too, if we're not getting enough water in and we're made of mostly water, then yeah, we could get pretty irritable.
Yeah.
So it's also part of the fuel that our body needs. So first I'm really looking at what is your whole rhythm like? What is your diet generally looking like? And then if we need to bring in any tests, same thing. I'm going to be looking at especially your cortisol levels for that circadian rhythm. And is someone sleeping, which chances are they could be waking up in the middle of the night if they're having these different stressors, or maybe not even really being able to get out of bed properly. So all these different telltale signs, even in the history, where I'm like, all right, here's where we need to start. Definitely usually on the stress and hormone piece, but yes, we could always bring in some tests as needed.
Beautiful. Out of all the conversations that I've been having with people, you are the first one that mentioned that. Just what is the rhythm of the day and the routines. And I love that because I'm all about the routine, the habits, the daily, what is the daily structure for the day? How do you maximize what you put in? How do you nurture yourself? What's your self-care? Like all these different things, right? Some of what I bring to the conversation with my clients as well. And how do we build in habits or tactics or whatever we need to put in there to support everything that you're saying, so that we can function the best we can, so that we could be the best partner that we want to be to our partner in our relationship. So the habits are just not wellness habits, but also connection habits. So all kinds of different habits just to do our life better. So what you said is perfect, just going with the rhythm, right? Like from the moment I open my eyes, okay, what is my life like? And then what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens, right? Until I close my eyes again at night. And can I do anything different to make my life easier and better throughout the day? So I love that that's where you start, that you didn't automatically start with blood work. Let's take 27 vials of blood. I'm not going to say who did that. And let's find out all of the things, So that's fun. And I'd like that you start there and then what's indicated, and then we'll do the test or any test that might be indicated. What things do you find that trip people up? So you mentioned a few things already. Like what creates impasses? Where do people get like and they start butting heads and stuff? And then what would an expert like yourself and who's a good mediator, do to be able to resolve that and to help them navigate that and pass through?
That's actually a great question. I'm working now with a couple where the wife has a lot of family money, and the husband is asking for a fair amount of spousal support. And the wife is furious. She feels that she has been supporting him for years and she doesn't want to support him anymore. And the husband feels he's entitled under law to what he's asking for and has in fact lowered what he's asking for just to kind of get to a deal. So there are emotional resentments and blockages of the process. Like she could easily, if she wanted to, she could easily give him what he's asking for and be done with the process. I'm not saying that she should,
right?
But she could. It's a choice that she could make.
Right.
And he has pointed out a couple of times that if she gave him what she's asking for, she would not ever feel the difference because of her finances. But she's saying he's not entitled and other things happened between them. And so this emotional stuff gets in the way sometimes of them coming to a deal. And so with this couple, I have been, like I said before, I've been doing shuttle mediation, talking to one then the other, and I've gotten them a lot closer. I haven't yet gotten them to a deal yet. But the distance between them is now about a fifth of what the distance was when I first started with them.
Lovely.
So they're much closer, but they're both getting close to a resistance point where they're saying, I'm not
budging
moving
anymore. Right.
Exactly. So I don't know if it'll resolve, but so that's one of the things I do is I try to because of the hot buttons between them, I've done shuttle and I've tried to get them closer, and I have. And another thing I may propose to them is that they each are coming in saying that their lawyers are telling them that my position is correct.
Right.
And so what I may,
happens.
what I may do next is say, can I have a mediation session with your lawyers? Because that way the lawyers can hear what each other is saying instead of it being a telephone game where the lawyer allegedly tells the client this and then the client tells me that and then I tell to the other person. If the lawyers get together, maybe I can cut through the remaining resistance.
Yeah, that's excellent. Unless the other lawyers have taken it lasting longer.
Well,
I'm just saying.
we might find out.
Yeah. I actually had
another process. Another idea I have with them is we can also there are retired judges who sometimes give neutral opinions.
Oh, how fun.
So another thing I might do with them to help them, because neither of them wants to go to court. It would take years. It would eat up a ton of money, $500,000 probably in legal fees. And it's just, it would be horrible for them. They have kids. Kids are kind of older, but they're still kids. And so I might just encourage them to get a neutral opinion.
Yep.
That would not be binding on them. They can still roll the dice and go to a judge, but at least it may be helpful to them to know what a judge who's dealt with matrimonials before would say about this. And one of them might well find out, oh my God, my lawyer is giving me bad information. And I'm going to lose if I go to court. Maybe I want to settle.
Oh, how wonderful. I love that. I might have to
So I'm always
use that.
trying for different ways to solve the problem and remove the impasse, depending on what's presented to me in a given situation.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I had a couple that was very similar to the couple that you're describing, like almost like I actually thought of them as soon as you brought them. I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's them. Very similar. Like the woman had the money and the guy wants part of it, and she's like, that's not your money, like the whole thing. So I understand that storyline. And I have another couple that is more current, that when you said $500,000, sometimes that's nothing actually what some people are spending. It's like, wow, you're throwing your money away. Like, can we figure something else out? Right? It's like almost silly. But yeah, people get stuck in that, and there's like an emotional component that I biased opinion. Let's address the emotional component so you could get unhooked, right? So maybe referring them to a therapist might be helpful. Hello there. I hope that you enjoyed that compilation. And if you haven't watched the first one, feel free to go back to the last episode, the Essentials Compilation Part 1, where we cover the first half of last year's episode. And it's the similar experience to this, where you get the segments for a quick flavor of the episode that they came from. Feel free to keep looking into what else serves you. If you haven't yet checked out the specific topics further, that either the guest or the topic that might have really felt right for you, that resonates for you at this time, feel free to do that now. Just go to the timestamps or the chapters listed in the description box, or just whatever you're watching this, wherever that's available to you. And feel free to dig a little deeper into whatever topic resonated for you more, or that you need the most right now. And again, you could just get everything in your inbox, the links to all of the episodes with the guests and all of their gifts. So feel free to just grab that for yourself and just have it handy so you could quickly reference things as you like. So you could get that at metrorelationship.com/podcast. Check it out. Give us a thumbs up, a like, a comment, all of the things, share. And I would love to hear what resonated for you the most, what topic you liked, what guests you liked the most, what you would like to hear in the future, know more about, and also what do you think of our podcast page, the little rebrand refresh that we've done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoy this, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Bye.